politics, 32% within the civic dimensions, but also 58% in terms of youth participation within the civic engagement. Now, today we are here to look at youth participation in politics, and of course it is the usual program, Youth of Purpose, with me, your host, Cheslin Ankunda. Elections around the corner. It's getting tough, it's getting intense. But of course, we are here as usual to make sure that we dissect what is happening, the current affairs, and also where the young people do lie in this perspective. As usual, I am not alone in this studio. I do have a very, very formidable team of one lady and two gentlemen. And I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, but I'm going to start it off with you, Ruth Akampurida.
Good evening, viewers. Good evening, everyone. I am Kacheza Akampurida. I'm a lawyer, a climate change activist, working with African Network of Green Ambassadors. I'm here to join in this conversation to assist, have a peaceful electoral process as a youth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruth, and we are happy to have you join us tonight. Next to Ruth is David. David is a very interesting person, a mindset instructor. I would love to have such engagement with you maybe after the show. David, please, you can introduce yourself.
A very good evening, our lovely viewers. My name is Senkungu David, a mindset change instructor working with the State House Skilling Centers in Kampala.
Thank you so much, David, for joining us. Next to David is Mandela Muhanguzi, a lawyer. Kindly introduce yourself to our viewers.
Thank you very much, our host, for the evening, and thank you very much for having us. And a very good evening to the viewers, wherever you're tuned in from. My name, again, for purposes of record, is Muhanguzi Mandela Mpuga, and I am a lawyer, a data scientist, and many other things. But today, I appear before you simply as a fellow Ugandan to share a few nuggets on peace and why it will be important in our conduct going forward in these elections.
Thank you so much. That is our panel tonight. And like I'd earlier highlighted, we have 36% at youth participation in elections, 32% at civic engagement, and 58% in terms of political participation. Now, we all know that actually since the year began, we've had different youth league structures. Uganda has political youth wings, NRM Youth Wing, UID, PPP, FDC, and all that. And so part of the structures which have somehow now been concluded are youth league structures. And however, we also do have the National Youth Council, which is part of the structures that young people actually show interest and run. And today, we have youth members of parliament running in the different constituencies. Today we want to find out, especially in the perspective of Uganda First, where we want to have peaceful elections, where we want to have peaceful campaigns, but also where we look at promoting youth as the first champions of peace in terms of the elections that we are about to have, during, before, and even after the elections. And I'll get it started with you, Ruth. When it comes to youth participation in politics, way beyond the ballot, what does it mean to you?
Well, the youth participation in elections before, during, and after the elections, to me means being involved, involvement, and participation. From the beginning, it means that the youth have been involved in the process of preparing what the coming elections will be, involved in different structures, as you said, trained to know what is required of a good voter, taking part in every process, registering, knowing their right, that it's a right of a youth or every Ugandan who is of the right age to vote. So that's what I understand before that period, before the elections. Then during elections, it's actually going on and participating in these elections, being part and parcel of the elections, waking up, attending, listening to people's manifestos, listening to different dialogues going on, debates, and all that. So that's the during. Then also the D-Day, the voting, the actual voting. So that's the during. Then the after, I understand it as what's the outcome? Do they agree with the outcome? Do they disagree? And what steps are they taking to show their disagreement, or how are they celebrating their agreement? So part of those would be the legal path, you know. Part of that would be some would resort to violent acts, which we shall, I believe, shall discuss at a later stage. But that's all the post period of elections. So it's before, during, and after. And I believe every youth should have a right, should be informed that they should be, or they have a right to participate at every stage. And as government or people in positions should avail the chance and the opportunity for the youth to participate at all stages. Yes.
Interesting. And to pick it from a point where you mentioned that the government should avail a chance for youth to actually participate, as I get to you, David, when you look at Africa, especially Tanzania here, our neighbors, the Chama cha Mapinduzi, by then TANU, which was created or formed by the late Julius Mwalimu Nyerere, there was no government to actually say, take this. Himself and others found it important that let us take on this mantle. And it's the same with South Africa, ANC with Nelson Mandela. It's the same even with Uganda, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni in the 1980s and way below. In your perspective, young people's participation, is it a push or is there willingness for young people to actually participate?
Thank you so much, Ankunda. Looking at that, it's not a push, because when you look at all the people that you've talked about, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, you talk of a country like South Africa, these are ideologues. These are people that fronted ideology. They didn't care so much about biology, but so much of ideology. What were they up to? And then when you come to us as Uganda, you look at the youth, looking at 78% is the total, when you look at the composition of the youth in the demographics of Uganda, they are 78%, maybe plus. So that is so pivotal. It is so pivotal. So an election is not supposed to be passive. It's pivotal. These are the pivots. So either we get backwards or we move forward. Therefore, looking at the example of those ideologues, I really think this is not a push. It's our responsibility. This is a civic responsibility for every young person out there to actually know that this is what you want. And you know, there's a difference between a want and a need.
Yeah.
We want a lot of things, but then there are also those that we need, even when we don't want them. So I believe that as the young people, it's so important for us to know why anyway do we need to vote. If we have the reason as to why we need to vote, then it's for all of us to actually go without a push. And I believe it's not it's not supposed to be pushed, for us, the young people, to go out there, because first of all, it's our right and it's our responsibility and it's our duty. These are different things. So for the young people, getting from the example of those ideologues that actually pushed something way bigger than themselves, because you look at, you've talked of the current government, like the President Museveni, as a person that had a bigger goal. And then I'm here saying that every generation has always had a cause. Then what is our cause as the young people of Uganda? Our cause, our generational cause, is first of all to turn up for these elections, as we are looking towards that democracy, because it's constitutional. We are allowed to vote, and the government has put in place all the necessary enablers for us to really go. That's why we have these campaigns. They are going on. People are listening to the leaders' manifestos. So it's our responsibility. If those very serious ideologues had this cause, what is our cause? To peacefully go into this election and also see how we push this to the next grade as Uganda.
Thank you so much for that addition. To get to you, Mandela.
Yes.
Article 59 guarantees people's rights to vote. Young people within Uganda are usually the largest masses on campaign trails. Look at NRM, look at NUP, look at FDC, look at ANT, look at your statuses. Young people are being vocal in terms of running behind those candidates. President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni is running, and I've seen very many people on their statuses say 13 million votes. But the reality is, majority of these young people are not registered. In your perspective, in regards to the right to vote and the relevant authorities, do you think there is enough civic engagement in terms of registering, but also showing up to vote?
Well, thank you very much, our host, once again. Allow me, please, to first give this discussion a bit of more context and to build on to your question systematically. I am aware, and I will just reiterate what my comrade here has already stated, that Uganda is considered one of the youngest populations worldwide. I believe we are only second to Niger, and like he mentioned, we have 75% of our population below 25 and about 55% below 18. That just goes to show that majority of our population and the Ugandans right now, for whatever reasons, are members of this youth demographic. In order for us to harness this demographic strength, it is very important that this great number of youth is engaged and empowered with ideology, and correct ideology, not just any ideology. So what this ideology will bring, it will allow us to leverage the vitality of this youth and their energies and strength while they are still youthful, and we put them to good use. We use the demographic strength and turn it into positive and measurable gains. To build on that, again, I just want to highlight something, that even my presence here in this studio, and in fact all of our presence here, we would not be here if it wasn't for this very important thing called peace. It is because we did not encounter any violence on our way here that we managed to reach this studio and we are able to participate in this civic engagement. And also because we are fairly confident that we are not going to encounter any violence on our way home. This is the reason why we are here. And it is because of this same confidence that several actors, investors, entities, and even international bodies have chosen for one reason or the other, or in one form or the other, to invest in Uganda. It is because of the confidence in a long and sustainable peace. And because also of this long and sustainable peace, Uganda and majority of the Ugandans, we find ourselves now steadily approaching that nodal point where Uganda will now see a transformation of quantitative gains into qualitative gains. I don't want to get too much into the discussion of what these entail, but just to demystify these concepts, I will talk a bit about what qualitative gains are, what they are supposed to mean. And when we talk about qualitative gains, we are looking at the fundamental change in the properties of something. We are talking about a paradigm shift in the way of operating and doing things, and things like those. So we are fortunate enough as a country that our government has managed to usher us to this point where we are now moving from merely accumulating or building capacity, and now we are moving on to transforming this capacity that we have already built into something which can be even competitive on a global scale. This is what we call qualitative transformation. We can see it, and it is evident in Uganda, in majority of these major works that we are seeing going on all over Uganda. We can see it in the transformation of our transport system from the single mode transport system to a multimodal transport system. You know, these are things which we have seen work in other areas, in other countries, and we also want to see it as youth and as Ugandans. We want to also be in Uganda and our family and friends, and we ask them, are you going by road? Are you going by railway? Are you getting the chopper? Whatever the case may be, this is what it means to have a multimodal transport system, and this is what it means to transform from quantitative gains to qualitative gains. You're moving from a single transport model to multimodal system. You're moving from merely creating access to education for all students and for all children to actually improving the quality of the curriculum and tailoring it to suit the changes and ongoing demands in the country. That is a qualitative shift. You're no longer just saying, you see, everyone should study. We are now saying what they are studying should be relevant to our current predicaments. And I believe personally that, of course, education should be sensitive to industry. Our students and the youth of the country should be being trained to address the challenges that are in society. And this is what we are actually discussing today. So on when we move forward to on this subject of qualitative gains, I just want to borrow certain examples, say of the standard gauge railway, of the Kampala Jinja Expressway, the Kampala Entebbe Expressway Phase 2, you have your Busega and Mpigi highways, you have your Kabalega and Kidepo airports. These are all significant and major projects that are ongoing in Uganda by the current government that again are set to usher us into a qualitative era of transformation. So with regards to what you mentioned about civic engagement, I believe that given that 75% of our population are young people, more to that, these are individuals who are in a serious need of guidance. I believe that if we want to leverage this demographic strength, if we want to harness it actually, because there are many people who might argue that having a young population might cause a stress on the resources of the country later.
Yes.
I believe that the only way to counter this is by empowering these youth with the right ideology so that they can think for themselves in the right way, so that they can be able to analyze and understand situations that are happening within society. To it, we have now elections which are ongoing, and very many youth do not seem to understand that this is a civic arena. What this means is that it's a tool available to the youth and the masses in general to determine for themselves who they want their leader to be going forward in a peaceful way.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Mandela, for that. He ends with something to do with a peaceful way. And of course, while he started, he also started with something to do with peace, because he said if he can leave home and come here, he's not short, he's not, that is peace to him. But also, there are different legislations, different policies, really re-emphasizing the aspect of peace. And especially particularly with the young people, when you look at the UN Peace and Security Resolution 2020-250, it's talking about how do we have young people as agents of peace and security, but also particularly even within the elections, because we have seen what has happened in Tanzania in the recent elections, but we've also been seeing what has been happening in Kenya with the Gen Zs, in terms of saying, we gave you our votes or our mandate, or we did not give you our mandate, but you are not performing to our expectations. And so, hence fronting violence. In perspective of different understandings in terms of peace or peaceful elections, your grandmother or my grandmother in the village where I come from in Bushenyi will tell you, as long as I can go to my bed and wake up early morning, that is peace to me. Another person will tell you, if I can go to a health center and I'm not able to access medicine, there is no peace. And we have over time talked about something called free and fair elections. And I have a friend who always re-echoes that. What is fair? Because they've not said excellent, they've not said free and excellent elections. So if maybe one person or two people, then someone would think it is peace. Ruth, from your perspective, what do you envision a peaceful election to look like within the Ugandan concept?
Thank you once again, Tracy. For me to well explain a peaceful election would require me to define or elaborate what actually peace means. Peace is defined differently at different levels. One, at an individual level, I can define peace as a person who is willing to excel, a person who is accepted, and a person who is also courageous enough to do whatever they wish to do. And in the same way, they are willing to extend their excellency to the rest of the people or the rest of the community. So in that way, people are comfortable, they are courageous, they are in a good environment to enable them do what they wish to do, and at the same time extend the opportunity to others to be able to do what they're doing, so that my colleague is able to excel, is able to do what they wish to do. But at a national level or country level, then peace goes to the absence of hostility, absence of political instability, where people are able to speak freely, freedom of speech, people are able to get involved and participate in a free and fair election, like you said. So that everything goes back to a whole big definition of peace. However, where does peace come from, or where do we get the word peace? Peace starts with conflict. Yes. We cannot talk about peace without talking about conflict. But what is inevitable is conflict. We always conflict every day, the other day, because we are human. So conflict is inevitable. But what's not inevitable is the violent conflict. So as youth, during these elections, we are supposed to play a role of not letting unsolved conflict turn into violent conflict. It's a big role that is not only tailored to the youth, but to other stakeholders in this country and nation. So it's our duty, first of all, to identify where conflict is, then sit and solve the conflicts. The principle of conflict is there is what I expect, there is what I get, and there is what is available. So as a youth, what is the gap? Then we get the gap principle, where what is the gap between what I expect and what I get? Is what I get good enough to keep me peaceful? And if it is, then I should settle and let others also have the rest. So when the gap conflict principle comes in, it is supposed to bridge that gap so that we don't turn the conflict, the unsolved conflict, into violent conflict. Then again, there is the cooperation conflict. When we expect something, there is someone meant to fulfill it or allow us to have it. By that I'm meaning people who are in office, people who are in position of power. So there comes a principle of cooperation. How are we cooperating with the people in positions of power? So when we cooperate harmoniously, we are able to close the gap between what we expect and what we can get. Because the people at the other end, they'll be able to communicate back. This is what is available. Can you work with this? And if we are unable to work with what is available, I think we should also be able to have innovative means of tabling what we expect and we believe that the other people on the other side can provide. So those are the other innovative means where we go into advocacy. We advocate that the young people are not, for instance, taken into civic education. We need this. So the cooperation or the peaceful means of bridging this gap is taken back to the level of an understanding that we don't need to be violent, we don't need to be rough, radical to actually solve certain things, because there are better ways, innovative means of how we can come to a conclusion. So as a youth, what is our role in a peaceful election? 1, where do you see conflict? 2, what have you done? Who have you engaged to make your conflict known? 3, what are you doing to cooperate with those who are able to solve or assist in solving your conflict to bridge that gap? Then in case they've not been able to solve the conflict, what measures are you taking? So our role here is to tell you that you don't need to take the violent means, but instead resort to a peaceful way. Discussions, advocacy, and not all people are not willing to listen. People are willing to listen. Parties are there. Legal systems are open to assist us with this. So I think that's the biggest role as a youth, and also in us understanding where conflict comes from and how we can bridge this to avoid to avoid violent and unpeaceful electoral process.
I think you state that quite clearly and well. But also to get to my next question to David, and from what Ruth actually has highlighted, the idea of willingness for people at conflict to actually talk peace, vis-a-vis the different structural causes of violence in elections. For example, you know there are some areas where you'll go and they'll tell you, we cannot vote maybe a non-Christian, or some areas are purely dominated by Muslims, or some people are going to tell you, you have been in power for long, or some people are going to tell you, this one maybe is not educated, this one is educated. All those things you're really going to listen to. Now, how do you reconcile those already pre-existing contributors vis-a-vis the willingness, and also making sure that you have a neutral ground in terms of leveraging or fronting peace, and which stakeholders can we engage?
Thank you so much, Ankunda. To take you just shortly back,
Yes, sure.
you see, when it comes to elections, this is a block of Ugandans choosing who their leader or their leaders should be.
Yes.
Then when it comes to that kind of sectarianism, where people have to say, this group, we can't vote for this group because they are this and this, we can't vote. It all comes back to the ideological developments.
Yes.
The ideology, the mindset of Ugandans, because we are looking at if someone says, I'm of this faith and I can't vote for someone from this faith, then there's a question. There's a question mark. Then when it comes to people that say, you know what, these ones are Muslims, no, we can't. Because at any time, at any level, Uganda is always going to be Uganda. But there is one thing we should appreciate, dear viewers: unity in diversity.
Yeah.
Because if during business, I can't say I'm not selling my rice to Muslims, then who am I going to sell to? During business, I'm selling to anyone, everyone. When it comes to voting, this is when I say I'm not voting for a Muslim. There's a question mark. You see, with business, you see even conductors in these taxis that we usually take to work, you know, he will call you any sort of thing: inspector, head teacher,
Chairman,
director, chairman. Even when you've never inspected anything, not even a store of chapatis,
Yes.
but they are calling you what?
Chairman.
Inspector. Why? What they want is money from you. They don't care whether you are the sheikh, whether you are a pagan. All they care about is what they get from you. And that is usually the baseline. Even when you go to a market, you find this lady selling her tomatoes. She will welcome you with a smile. She won't ask you whether you come from Bale, whether you come from Gulu, or all they want is this common goal for them to sell their goods. So same applies to these elections and in how we choose. You know, you talked of something, and then I want to bring this forward of there's a difference between form and content. There is form. You can see me the way I am. But content is what is inside me. So when you are looking at me, if you judge me by my color, and you don't judge me by my character, my discipline, my etiquette, my manners, my behavior, then there is a question mark. So when it comes to choosing leaders, as the young people, we need to sit down and say, okay, this is what we want. We look at the form. Does it have the content that we want? No. Someone is saying we can't vote for someone who is old. But then there is a thing of negation for negation. The young replace the what? The old. But you don't just, it's a process. You don't just come and say, let the old do what? Go away. It's a process. That's why I have a grandfather who gave birth to my father, and I am here. So now I can't start saying, since I'm I'm a youth. It's me to enjoy everything. So let me do away with my father and my what? It's a process. With time, I will be the grandfather. Actually, with time, I'll be the ancestor. And the people will be breaking me. We break the spirits of the ancestors. For now, I'm calling myself a young man. Because this is just the body, but the ideology. This is the body. Because with time, if I do not do what I'm supposed to do as a young man, then I'll have wasted my youthfulness. So I'm supposed to make use of this, because being a youth is not a badge of honor. It's a stage which even the old people went through. But why have they actually gone through this stage and now they are better even in their old age? And some of us, even in this process, you hear that even in most of these campaigns or what, some of our colleagues are dying. Yeah. So for them, they don't even have that chance of making it to that old age that they are saying they don't need. We need to take care of ourselves as the young people and know that we need to keep building capacity. We need to synergize, you know. We need to look at our energies and have directed energies, because you can have all the energy in the world, but if you can't use that energy to serve your purpose as a young man or as a young lady out there, then it ceases to be energy. It's wasted energy. Therefore, as we go to these elections, as we are looking at leaders, we are not seeing of who is old, who is young. We are looking at capacity, who is capable. And you as a person, what do you want from that leader? What do you see? My brother here, Mandela, talked of something. You know, some of us, when in this process, we end up becoming maybe lame, maybe the process is going to end, because it's just a season.
Even you're arrested.
You're arrested. So this is a season for a reason. The reason, we clearly know it, democracy. But now, time is going to come after elections, and life is going to go on. But how is it going to leave you, you who has an amputated leg? Because police came to disperse you, they threw a tear gas canister, you picked it to throw it back, and it burst your fingers. You're going to be lame. Therefore, as we are doing any work, you're not going to be able to use your what? Yet God says, he will bless the work of your what? Of your hands, but you have no hands. So what is God going to bless? So let's really be very disciplined, because even these security people, they are human beings like us. They have emotions too. When you pick a stone to throw it, they are emotional. Like, we are all emotional beings, and they are our brothers and what? And sisters. The moment they tell you don't cross here, please don't, because if you force, even if it were in that position, some of you would even have acted worse than what they do. So we should all respect each other and know what you want, and clearly know that this is a season, it's going to get done, and Uganda is going to go on. But how is it going to go on when the 78% we are talking about is not ideologically oriented? So ideological orientation is what we need for our young people, the 78%, because we have the ability. Uganda can be great, and it's going to be great. Uganda is going to be great, you can clearly see. So, but we need people that are ideologically oriented and disciplined. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We are talking about Uganda first in terms of elections that are free from violence, but also young people being champions of the change that we desire to have. And of course, Mr. David right here has clearly answered the question, especially from a perspective, I think, also being a mindset change instructor. You really brought it out so well. And unity in diversity is a conversation that must keep going on each and every day. And also we need to see religion has become a tool also for politics. You go to church and because you are an MP, this and that, you'll be given a front seat depending on where you've gone, and vis-a-vis the other one maybe who might not subscribe to that religion. So it is a call out there that we all partake in this, not body for now of Christ, but the champion for peace that we desire to have. And to get to you, Mandela, commercialization of politics is one of those that has continued to increase violence. If you have violence in a way that people would want more, those whom you do not give, they will probably not vote you. But also on the other hand, of a candidate that you're running against or with, if they do not have the money, you're talking about emotional violence on their side. You're talking about physical violence. You're going to pass and young people are going to be shouting, Oyotarina chigati, Ononyachi, go home. And so violence not even just within the person who has the money, but also the person who does not have the money. Young people's role in terms of ending commercialization of politics, or how do we strike a balance between the little money that one can use in an election, because you need to actually use some money, vis-a-vis the huge sums that we are seeing. Yes.
Thank you very much once again for that question. You're going to allow me to add my voice,
yes, sure,
to that of my
yes.
fellow panelists, and say that it really starts and ends with mindset and ideology. It starts and ends with the way someone perceives the world, the way someone looks at things in the world. It again really starts and ends with peace, as she properly highlighted. We again find that peace is at the backbone of everything, and it is only in the prevalence of peace that we can even talk of having these engagements with masses. With regards to this commercialization of politics, my recommendation has always been that one should not focus on, that one individual should not focus on this process per se, and neither should the voters. They shouldn't focus on the now. They should have enough foresight to know that after this political process through which we are going to be elected, I am going to still have a family, I am going to still have a life. So this thing that we are seeing more and more in this day and time, of people going through great lengths, of people trying to selling their legs and hands